This video is sponsored by the censorship-hating guys over at Trade Genius. I've been closely following their trades for over 2 years, and these guys flat out know what they're doing in the cryptocurrency world. Let them do the research, you get their private alerts, execute their trades, and watch your money work for you. It's as simple as that. If you're looking for something more complex, Trade Genius is not for you. The link is in the description. If you guys get something out of this video, subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and share it with everybody you know.
Our world is literally insane. When I think of the most vile, corrupt people on the face of the planet, I think about lawmakers or politicians. These psychopaths parasitically live off the societal extortion practice known as taxation. They sit around all day and they craft these laws, which are nothing more than opinions written on fancy pieces of paper. And if you disobey their laws, men with guns come to you and they throw you into a cage. And then when something bad happens in our lives, like a mass shooting at a school, we beg these politicians to please do something, make more laws to make us safe. And most people are blinded to the fact that the laws that these politicians crafted are the very same laws that lead up to all these deaths in the first place, i.e. gun-free zones. Guys, if you enjoy this video, subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and share it with everybody you know.
Another senseless shooting, this time at a high school in Parkland, Florida, where a gunman, a former student, opened fire yesterday again.
I guess I still don't understand why we need to have AR-15s.
Give me one example where a citizen used an assault rifle with a high-capacity magazine for a constructive purpose. Now, they always present this theoretic, well, what if there's not 1 or 2 invaders to my home? What if there's 10 or 12? And after I've killed the first 8 or 9, I need to reload. Yeah, let me know when that happens. And
a 15-year-old at home with his 12-year-old sister when burglars try to break in.
That's when investigators say the boy grabbed his dad's assault rifle. The boy grabbed his dad's assault rifle and started shooting, and he hit one of the men repeatedly. This all unfolded this afternoon in the 2600 block of Royal Place Court.
A young boy was protecting his sister. You know, he was in fear for his life and for his sister's life.
The brother grabbed his father's assault rifle and knew what to do with it. His dad is a Precinct 1 deputy constable.
We don't try to hide things from our children in law enforcement.
The children were not hurt. The home invaders fled, leaving a trail of blood.
I guess I still don't understand why we need to have AR-15s.
This is video from a surveillance system overlooking the driveway of the victim's home. You can see the suspects pull up in their car. One of the would-be home invaders fires a shot as he runs into the garage. Within seconds, several more shots ring out. Investigators say these came from the man inside the house. Look closely. Shards of glass fly as bullets hit the front windshield.
this is one of the 2 cameras that caught this crime on tape. Once the homeowner started shooting back, the suspects scattered. 3 ran that way. The final one jumped back into the car and sped away. You can see in the driveway some of the black rubber still left behind.
So for those who are saying, thoughts and prayers, and this is not the time to talk about guns,
this is the time to talk about guns.
what has been so striking here in Parkland is the response from some of the students, from some of the survivors who are now speaking out in hopes of change. We can't ignore the issues of gun control that this tragedy raises, and so I'm asking, no, demanding we take action now. Why? Because at the end of the day, the students at my school felt one shared experience, that our politicians had abandoned us by failing to keep assault weapons out of our school.
The way people talk about politicians and lift them up on this ridiculously high pedestal, you'd think that they're the cream of the crop, the top tier of human evolution, the all-wise, highly moral champions who have the godlike ability to lift us all out of our poverty or make us well when we're sick by providing health care, or perform as some sort of almighty, all-holy savior who will magically come to our aid when we or our children are in peril. And they're perceived to be so powerful, in fact, that they can do all this with the stroke of a pen applied to a fancy piece of paper. This fancy paper with the signatures of the politicians is then blessed by the priests of the state, and that mystical parchment is carried through the holy incantation of the religious legislative process and deemed a law that everyone must now follow or risk being punished by the enforcers of the state for disobedience. That's the fantasy world everybody who's calling for politicians to do something to keep the rest of us safe lives in.
Do something now, not later. Now, children are being murdered. Do something.
But the reality is that all politicians should be viewed with just as much contempt and scorn as a used car salesman. Left politician, right politician, it doesn't matter. They're all smooth-talking, slick-dressing liars who cannot be trusted. History is replete with examples of this fact, and it amazes me that otherwise intelligent individuals still gives Washington's District of Criminals the time of day. They are perpetual thieves of the people who lead us into perpetual mass casualty events called wars, as they domestically pretend to be incensed and saddened by the domestic mass casualty events that are exacerbated by the policies they themselves have enacted. For example, do you as a moral human being want to bring a firearm into a post office so that in the event that a crazy person decides to open fire on you or your fellow patrons in line, you can protect yourself and others? Well, you can't legally, because the almighty politicians have declared such an action a federal offense. Maybe you've always been told that it was illegal to carry a firearm on post office property, but you've never actually seen the law. Well, here it is in the Code of Federal Regulations. Title 39, which is named Conduct on Postal Property. It says, no person while on postal property may carry firearms or other dangerous or deadly weapons or explosives, either openly or concealed, or store the same on postal property except for official purposes. So, if you're a law-abiding citizen who follows all the government's rules, you subject yourself to the power of the individuals who disregard the law and come on the property with a gun anyway. And if it happens to be a bad guy with a gun who intends to do people harm, well, the politicians have seen to it that you're going to have a really, really bad day. Maybe your last day here on this earth. So next time you see a politician, you can either grovel at his feet and beg him for more laws.
What we need are laws, real laws, that do everything possible to keep assault rifles out of the hands of people who are going to shoot our kids.
Or shake his slimy, parasitic hand and thank him for keeping you and your family less safe and subjecting you to unnecessary danger. So, you cannot have a gun on post office property. And according to a court ruling, you can't even have a gun locked in your car in the parking lot of a post office. What if you do carry one on post office grounds, just for safety? Ask former postal worker Clarence Paul Dorisan. At some point, Dorisan's boss learned that he had a handgun in the car. He called the police and Clarence was arrested. He lost his job, lost his concealed weapons license, got jail time, and now he has a criminal record for the rest of his life. Politicians' edicts create criminals out of people who have done absolutely nothing wrong and have every intention of doing what is right. So what are politicians saying here with these laws that lead to mass casualty events and know they create mass casualty events? They're actually saying we don't want people to be able to protect themselves on federal property, and if they bring the means to defend themselves and others on these properties, they will be fined, jailed, and we will deem them criminals. And it's the same way on school grounds. So in actuality, the politicians are the real criminals who make the laws that create a class of fabricated criminals who are thrown into cages for simply disobeying the politicians' written edicts. And we want them to help us make more laws? These psychopathic puppets surround themselves with heavily armed men with guns, and they want to make sure that teachers at school are disarmed? Hypocrisy. Now, I have a question to ask. There's all this talk about keeping our children safe.
We need to protect our children.
It's obvious that while they claim that they want to keep you safe through the enactment of their laws, politicians work to do the exact opposite of keeping you safe. You don't have to look any further than the areas with the highest body counts. Gun-free zones, otherwise known as criminal empowerment zones. The fact is, if you want to increase your chances of being severely harmed or murdered, spend more time in gun-free zones. If you want to reduce your chances of being harmed or murdered, get away from politicians' gun-free zones. Isn't it obvious that if you really wanted your kids to benefit from an atmosphere of maximum security, at the very least, you would never want them to be unarmed and unprotected in a gun-free zone? Isn't it logical and consistent with love and concern that if you don't want your kid to be in a position where he has to cower in a corner of a dark schoolroom or get shot or even die, you wouldn't have any problem taking him out of public school? But where's the mass exodus? If your kid was being poisoned with cafeteria lunches, would you wait for a politician to make a safe lunch law? Or would you tell him to immediately stop eating lunch? You'd think the answer would be obvious, but apparently it's not. Now, alternatively, if you still insist that you want your kids subjected to a government indoctrination program, and if you're entrusting teachers and principals with your kids anyway, wouldn't you want those teachers to be trained in the use of firearms and have them armed in case a shooting happens? Can you think of anything safer at that moment than being protected by a teacher who has a gun and knows how to use it? Because let's be honest, you who want to keep your kids in gun-free slaughter zones set up by crooked politicians, while you cry out to those same crooked politicians to save you, are insisting that those politicians who have already created the laws that are currently bringing tragedy into your lives make more dangerous laws for the rest of us. From a purely objective viewpoint, politicians are criminals and should rightly be viewed as the villains of society. There are always going to be evil people doing evil things. No law will ever be able to stop evil from happening, and in fact, laws magnify the evil that real criminals commit. So I have a couple workable solutions to this school shooting problem. Number one, arrest politicians and hold them financially accountable if they try to create laws that would keep an individual from protecting himself whenever and wherever he wants. Number two, if you're going to keep your kids in public school, dissolve all gun-free criminal empowerment zones and turn them into gun-saturated good guy empowerment zones. Number three, train your teachers and kids to defend and rely on themselves for self-defense, not on some after-the-fact government agency that comes in later and takes pictures of all the dead bodies. And number four, have heavily armed teachers who can instantly meet deadly force with deadly force should the need arise. Then, instead of mourning the death of a sacrificial teacher hero who threw his body in front of students to shield them from gunfire, they can celebrate the life of a warrior teacher hero who accurately fired a couple well-placed center mass rounds into the chest of a coward who doesn't deserve to live long enough to see the inside of a taxpayer-funded prison cell. Guys, thanks for watching my video. You'll want to take a couple minutes to look through my shirt store. I've got over 50 hard-hitting designs like facts don't care about your feelings, protecting and serving the crap out of you, legalize freedom, truth is treason in the empire of lies, nobody for president, start leading yourself, taxation is theft, CNN, the communist news network, do no harm, take no, born free, taxed to death, sheep pollution, and you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. There are way more designs, and I'm adding new ones every week, so check back often. The purpose of these shirts is to interrupt regularly scheduled life with a thought-provoking, hard-hitting nugget of truth. Your purchase keeps content flowing on my demonetized, YouTube-censored, advertiser-unfriendly channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.